One Piece chapter 1155, it is titled The Rocks Pirates, and we got a color cover page. Man, it feels like it's been forever since we got that, but we see the Straw Hats. They're high up off the ground on top of some buildings, and they're with penguins, and I think that's pretty ironic because, well, penguins can't fly. You see some of the Straw Hats enjoying their time up there. Some of them are a little scared, like Nami and Usopp. They probably don't like heights. Love this colored cover page. But let's get into chapter 1155's breakdown. In the last chapter, Loki, he jumped from the sun realm into the underworld, and he wanted to kill himself to end the pain and end the suffering because he wasn't loved. And while he was crying, a mysterious figure pulled up on Elbaph, and it was none other than Roxy Xebec, and he wanted two things. Number one, he wanted to know if this location was Elbaph, and then number two, where the heck was King Harald? Which brings us to this chapter. We know that Harald is constantly leaving Elbaph because he wants to connect with other nations, wants to connect with other humans. So right now, Harald's not on Elbaph, and so Xebec's like, okay, well, this is interesting. I'll give you a proposal, Loki. Go back to the castle and say, hey, that Loki's been injured. Harald, you need to come back. And Loki looks at him. He's like, who do you think I am? Why would I take orders from such a puny human? Loki at this age, very ignorant, doesn't understand that there are some strong humans out there, and similar to Harald, he thinks just because he's big, that means that he's stronger and that he's superior. And well, Loki got a little humble later in the chapter, I can't even lie. But at this point, I was like, I wonder why Xebec wants to meet Harald and how these two are connected. I think Loki talking the way that he did, I think part of it, yes, that he does actually hate humans, but I also think that part of it is that Loki, he's been hurt before, so he doesn't actually believe that his father cares for him, and that even if he was going to find out about this news that Harald was going to come back for him, which that's honestly pretty sad. I'm actually surprised how reasonable Xebec is. He's actually more calm and calculated than I originally thought he would be. He reminds me of the perfect mix between Luffy and Blackbeard because, well, at least at this point, Loki wasn't hurt, but because Loki was running his mouth, Xebec, he made sure that he was hurt. But I do want to read word from word a statement about Xebec's swordsmanship because it's actually pretty impressive. So the narrator stated that Rox's sword attacks were famous for blasting everything in sight like a gigantic hammer or a cannonball. The glaze. This is the first time in my memory where I specifically recall the narrator talking about a specific sword style. The only other swordsman that we've experienced who strikes similar to Xebec would be Roger and Shanks, the way that they use the divine departure. And shoot, there was a panel of Roger charging up his sword with Conqueror's Hockey back in the day, and it looks exactly like Xebec here. So what does this mean for Mihawk? Because y'all know the drill. Anything related to a sword, anything related to swordsmanship, we instantly talk about Mihawk. And I guess that kinda gives Mihawk some credit, and it shows how much we respect him, because that means that we're holding him to the standard if he's the first person that we talk about anything sword related. But I will be honest with you guys, I'm not sure if this statement is a positive in Mihawk's favor or if it's a negative. I really don't know. Because on one hand, Mihawk along with Ryuma are still one of the only two swordsmen in the series that have turned their blades black, and we consider that to be the pinnacle of swordsmanship. But on the other hand, we consider Rox to either be the strongest character in this series or at least second to Roger. And well, okay, that gets a little bit dangerous, I guess, if we were to involve people like Joy Boy Emu and Davy Jones, which I'll get to in a bit. So at least in Roger's era, Xebec was either number one or number two. So then that begs the question, is Mihawk superior than those two? At least in my opinion, no, and some people might disagree, which is fine, but then that also begs the question, why the heck didn't Roger or Xebec, why didn't they turn their blades black. So you guys see where this can get a little bit dangerous, see where it can get a little confusing. Now fast forward to the Reverie, because that is how Harald and Xebec are connected, or I guess technically we're going back in time. With this panel, it was one of the coldest ones I have ever seen in the series. Xebec's aura is off the charts, and I know I glaze a lot of characters. I don't care. This one, oh, Xebec, I became a fan. He might be in my top 10. Like I said, we are in a flashback. Within a flashback at the Reverie, we know that Xebec killed an admiral, but this part, oh, this wasn't public knowledge, because apparently Xebec, he made it to the flower room and he saw Emu. And this is impressive because we know the amount of security that is at Marriage Wall, and no one knows of Emu's existence. There's only a handful of characters that have ever seen Emu. Those include Doflamingo, Cobra, Sabo, Xebec, I guess now, and then Warple. Warple didn't even mean to, but well, he found a way to see Emu. That's freaking impressive. And Xebec, we know his goal was that he wanted to be king, that he wanted to be the ruler of the world. So he was eventually going to have to take down Emu. And I guess this would explain why Emu was cutting up different images or had a blade with different images of Luffy, Shirahoshi, and Blackbeard, because well, we know Xebec and Blackbeard, that's his father, that's his son, that relationship that they have. So Emu definitely has generational beef, because Xebec said that this isn't his time, but he will be back. The aura is insane. I do want to highlight Gunko here. I don't think many people are talking about her, but she appears to be a direct servant to Emu, and this flashback took place a long time ago. It looks like she didn't age. There's a couple of chapters, I believe 908. I wonder if she was a servant back then, as well as the chapter where Joy Boy's Hockey was released. We saw Emus reacting to that hockey, and there was another servant there as well, and that, like I said, that could potentially be Gunko. Now, the words worshiper of Davy Jones, that stood out to me. I wonder if Davy Jones was the big bad of Joy Boy's time, kind of like how Xebec and Rocks that they had, well, in their era, and then back then it was Joy Boy and Davy Jones, and now it's Luffy and Blackbeard. Looking back, the first time that Davy Jones was mentioned was back in chapter 306 during the Davy Back fight, and I'll also talk about that a little bit later. But Davy Jones, he was considered the pirate of the deep sea. And if you don't know the lore behind Davy Jones, fun fact, Davy Jones actually isn't a real pirate compared to someone like Blackbeard, compared to Lafayette, Sir Francis Drake. If you look at just pirates in history, Davy Jones doesn't exist. Since Davy Jones doesn't really exist, there's not much lore on him. I think the best thing, and at least what I'm going to use, is the lore that happened in Pirates of the Caribbean, because like I said, since he doesn't exist, there's not much on him, and this is, I guess, the best version of him. I think the only stuff that we know is that people reference Davy Jones's locker, which is an idiom referring to the bottom of the sea, essentially the graveyard for sailors and pirates that died at sea. But from Pirates of the Caribbean, Davy Jones is actually one of the more renowned or the more popular pirates in that franchise. He is the captain of the Flying Dutchman and has the curse of Calypso. Calypso, if you guys don't know, is a sea goddess in Greek mythology and embodies the unpredictability and just the wrath of the ocean itself. Davy Jones was a mortal man who fell in love with Calypso, and Davy Jones was tasked with ferrying souls lost at sea to the afterlife aboard his ship, the Flying Dutchman. Because of this responsibility, he could only set foot on land once every 10 years to be with Calypso, and then when that time came, Calypso didn't appear, breaking Davy Jones's heart. And so because of this, he betrayed her, binding Calypso into her human form and stripping her of her godly power. And so because Davy Jones betrayed Calypso and abandoned his duties in the task of ferrying the souls, he himself was cursed. His heart, which was filled with pain and hatred, it was cut cut out and placed in the dead man's chest, and then without his heart, he became less human. He became bound to the sea, unable to die unless his heart was destroyed. I do want to reiterate, like I said, Davy Jones is not a real pirate. If you guys see something that says he is, let me know, but in my research, I see a lot of stuff that says he wasn't true, and so based off of the Pirates of the Caribbean, Davy Jones is a very important pirate, a very important character, so it wouldn't shock me if he was important in One Piece. But if you guys enjoy regular One Piece content, make sure you guys like the video, subscribe to the channel, and hit the notification bell so you guys don't miss out on a new video. I'll pop out different One Piece content almost each and every day. Harald and Xebec, they're both at the Reverie while Xebec was in the flower room. Harald, he was having a good old time at the Reverie. He's getting chased. There's different celestial dragons that want him, and I love Harald, I really do. But you mean to tell me, as big as you weren't expecting to be the center of attention? We saw how big Shirahoshi is, how Charles wanted her. So it makes sense that these different celestial dragons want Harald as their slave. With all the commotion that's going on, Xebec, he's trying to make his escape too. And because Xebec was the one that captured the kings, people actually thought it was Harald. So Harold's pissed off because he was framed, and so he saw Xebec and they clashed swords, and both of them are strong. Both of them definitely got the strength of an emperor, because the clash was so intense that it blew everyone away within a 5-kilometer radius. Probably a clash of conquerors. It wouldn't surprise me if both of these two are conquerors just with how they carry themselves. If anything, I'd be shocked if they weren't conquerors. They both enjoy a good fight. One's a pirate, one's a warrior of Elbaph, and so, you know, they go their separate ways. If they're destined to meet, it'll be at Elbaph, and, well, later in the chapter, they did indeed meet at that island. Roger may have been the pirate king, but we cannot sleep on Xebec's accomplishments, because low-key, Roger at that #1 slot, it might have some asterisk behind it, because Xebec was a problem, and I plan on doing an in-depth video about this later this week, so stay tuned for that. But let's look at some of the accomplishments that Xebec had. He killed an admiral. First of all, we know how strong admirals are, and well, I'm at the point where we might have to say Yonko over admiral. I might fold, because yeah, having someone be killed in a one-on-one situation like that, and it doesn't appear that Xebec was hurt or anything, yeah, that's impressive. Xebec also attacked a ship that contained the heavenly tribute for the celestial dragons. He destroyed the gates of justice, and all of this was done when Rox was solo dolo. And when I first heard this, I was like, okay, but why the heck didn't Luffy get a high bounty? He broke into Ennis lobby, he broke into Impel Down, he broke into Marineford, and he escaped alive. So his bounty should be higher than what he got. I think it was like 400 mil at the time. His bounty should have been higher, but I guess technically everything that Luffy did, right, he had some form of help, some assistance, and this lobby, it wasn't just him. Marineford, there was the wars and everything there, so I guess it shouldn't have been as high as Rox, but 400 million is criminal. I mentioned that Rox was solo dolo. A lot of people speculated that the way that Rox got all these strong members on his crew was Davy backfights, and lo and behold, it was confirmed that he ended up gaining Stussy, Whitebeard, Shiki, and other members later, right? They're all through Davy backfights, which is pretty cool. I think so many people skip over Long Ring, Long Land, and don't even necessarily give it attention because it's boring. I think the arc is trash, I really do, but Davy backfights are still important, and so I think it's pretty cool that this is how Rox got his crew, or at least all the members, since he's ridiculously strong and he got strong people, and of course they're gonna serve in quotes under him. Like Xebec thought, Harald came back when he found out that Loki was injured. Yes, Loki, people actually do care about you. They actually want to see you flourish and don't want you to be hurt. So Loki, whenever you join the Straw Hats, Loki for Straw Hat, oh, you're gonna see that real quick. We found out that the reason why Xebec wants Harald back, wanted him to have this discussion, it's because, well, Xebec was impressed with their little clash and wanted Harald to join his crew. Now, obviously, Harald isn't going to join, because if that's the case, we know how terrible Xebec is, how the media and just the world views him as this high-end criminal. It would make Harald look bad. All the hard work and trying to build these connections, he just can't join his crew. Something that really stood out to me is how Harald mentioned the people joining Rox how if you follow that path that it'll lead you to ruin. And it takes me back to what Kaido said about how pirates constantly betray people. So I wonder if at some point, we know that Xebec was done in by the world government, that he was killed, but was there someone within the crew that betrayed him, causing the world government to capture him? Every member of the crew is there for their personal gain. Sure, being with Xebec, it has some perks, but like I said, they're all in it for themselves. And this reminds me a lot of what Blackbeard was preaching to Aokiji whenever he was recruiting him, that pirates, they don't have to be friends, that it's all about an alignment of personal interest. And shoot, even the Straw Hats, technically they're all in it for their own agenda. Sure, it's kind of shifted a little bit, and you know, they want Luffy to become a pirate, the Pirate King, and they want to assist him in that. But by assisting Luffy with being the Pirate King, it also further advances their goals, being able to become the world's strongest swordsman, find the all blue, etc. We got to talk about the crew that is in the flashback now, because it's a little different from the characters that we saw at God Valley. Some members that weren't pictured there include Don Marlin, Wang Zi, who was the future Commodore of Pirate Island, and that was the person that Blackbeard beat to become the new ruler. And then lastly, Ganzui. Compared to God Valley, there was Gloriosa, Big Mom, Kaido, and Captain John. Now that's not to say that these three in this flashback that they weren't at God Valley. We know Rox's crew only got stronger, but they also could have died or went their separate ways. We're not entirely sure. Back during Long Ring Long Land, I think it was Nico Robin, she stated that Pirate Island was the birthplace of Davy Back fights, which isn't technically true, since it was stated that Rox gathered his crew before he took over Hachinosu, but chances are that Pirate Island, it's the most popular place for a Davy Back fights to occur, and so people like Big Mom, Gloriosa, and those that were at God Valley, they were probably one there. Speaking of Pirate Island, it was originally known as a barren island, which all you could do is wait for death. However, because there was a massive gold deposit there, a shadowy organization, they helped the criminals amass a fortune, which pissed off the world government. And so Xebec decided to make a deal with the world government that they would liberate Pirate Island, when in actuality, they were just duping the world government and stealing their money. And then Xebec, he'd become the ruler of Pirate Island, which would serve as headquarters for his base so that he can amass different strength and money, and so eventually he could achieve his dream of being the ruler of the world. A few chapters ago, Loki said similar to how Luffy looks up to Shanks, he looked up to a specific man, and it was Xebec. And this is the scene whenever he first started looking up to Xebec, just seeing how ambitious he was. And then the chapter ends with 4 years passing, and you know, constantly still trying to recruit Harald, constantly him refusing. Rox went on and, you know, went ahead and liberated and took over Hachinosu. He gained, you know, fortune, gained fame. He, you know, his crew became even stronger, and you know, with all of that, it sent different shockwaves throughout the world. But that's it for chapter 1155. I think this is probably all we're going to get for Xebec, at least at this point in the series. You might get some stuff with Blackbeard, maybe once we learn about Joy Boy, maybe when we learn even more about Roger, I'm not sure, but I think at this point we're done with him, and it's just going to be Harald and Loki and what actually happened causing Loki to kill Harald. And I'm excited for a break next week, and then we get a chapter, and then it's another break because I think it's weekly Shonen Jump break, but I'm really excited. Let me know how you guys feel about this chapter in the comment section below. Thank you guys so much for watching. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Hit the notification bell so you guys never miss out on a new video. From my Instagram, Twitter, and TikTok is on the screen in the description below. And don't forget to unleash your potential.